Before we begin, take a second to tell us where you're listening from, your city or your country. It helps people find each other in the comments. If you connect with grounded stories about ordinary people trying to do the right thing, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who listens the way you do. This is Prime Black Stories, and tonight's story doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't have to. The laughter didn't last long. It came out in a quick burst, one sharp sound from the far end of the conference table. Then it hit the glass walls and broke apart into silence. Trevor kept his face still even as his throat tightened. Across from him, a laptop sat open, projecting onto the screen behind HR's chair. The cursor hovered near a tab no one was supposed to see. His name was there, bold black letters, on a file that didn't belong in this room. Nobody moved right away. Not even the woman who'd laughed. Her hand hovered over her pen like she'd forgotten what it was for. And Trevor understood, in that small, irreversible moment, that whatever happened next wasn't going to stay contained. Trevor didn't look at the screen again. He didn't want the extra detail, the exact font, the timestamp, the way a private thing looked when it was made public. He already knew what lived in his HR file, the way you knew what lived in a scar, not always visible, but always there if you pressed the wrong spot. He kept his eyes on the conference table instead. Cheap laminated wood with a seam down the middle, smudges where people rested their forearms, a surface built to be wiped clean, like the company wanted to believe everything could be wiped clean. At the far end, Jenna Whitaker's mouth was still slightly open. She'd been the one who laughed. It hadn't been loud enough to get her in trouble, nothing that would show up in minutes. But in a room where everyone was pretending to listen, it carried. A few minutes earlier, she'd said, "Trevor's always leaving early," like it was harmless, like it belonged in the category of office quirks. She'd smiled when she said it, and two people had smiled back. Trevor recognized one of them, a guy who always laughed at managers' jokes. Another woman whose smile was automatic, like a reflex to keep herself safe. Trevor had felt the heat rise in his chest, the mix of humiliation and anger he never let reach his face. He'd started to speak, already crafting a sentence he could live with. Something small, something clean, something that wouldn't be replayed later as attitude. Then the file opened. Marisol Nguyen, the HR business partner, sat closest to the projector. Her posture went stiff. Her eyes flicked across the screen, then to Trevor, then away again. Professional panic, the kind she'd been trained to hide, failing in slow motion. "Oh," Marisol said quietly, as if she'd bumped into someone in a hallway. Her fingers moved too fast on the trackpad. "That's not the right." Nobody interrupted. It wasn't courtesy. It was fear. People understood what it meant when HR showed something by accident. It meant someone, somewhere, had messed up. And corporate mess-ups had a way of looking for the safest person to blame. Trevor felt his pulse thud in his ears. He pictured what the file looked like inside the system. Tabs, notes, dates. He pictured every time he'd asked for flexibility and heard, "We'll see." Every time he'd been late by minutes because the school bus ran behind. The write-up he'd fought. The complaint he hadn't wanted to file but did because he ran out of polite ways to be treated fairly. He'd told himself those things were private, contained in systems with passwords, policies, and a promise that people would behave like adults. Now, in a room full of co-workers who only knew him as quiet, competent Trevor from operations, it had been opened like a door that shouldn't have been unlocked. Marisol finally clicked out of it. The screen blinked blank, then the correct slide deck. An attendance policy update. The kind of corporate housekeeping designed to sound even-handed and be used unevenly later. But the air didn't reset with the slide. Silence stayed. Jenna's cheeks were mottled pink, like her skin couldn't decide whether to apologize or defend itself. Someone shifted in a chair and stopped halfway, the movement too loud in the quiet. Trevor felt eyes on him without anyone fully looking at him, people wanting to measure how much damage had been done without being responsible for it. He lifted his water bottle, took one calm sip, and set it down carefully. His hand was steady. He'd learned to keep it steady. Marisol cleared her throat. "Okay. So, as I was saying," she glanced at the slide, then back at the room. "We're reviewing flexibility and attendance expectations across departments. This isn't punitive. It's about consistency." Consistency. Trevor almost smiled at the word, because consistency was what he begged life for and rarely got. Maya's mother inconsistent, school schedules inconsistent, management moods inconsistent. And yet, it was always Trevor who was asked to be consistent, unmoving, unbothered, grateful. He let Marisol talk. He let the meeting finish. He nodded at the right moments, wrote down nothing, and spoke only once, briefly, when his manager asked if operations had any questions about the revised clock-in window. "No," Trevor said, voice even. "We're good." He heard the restraint in his own tone and knew what it cost him. Restraint wasn't free. He always paid later, in private. When the meeting ended, chairs scraped. People gathered notebooks and phones. Someone made a thin joke about how Monday mornings should be illegal, and nobody laughed. Not really. Jenna lingered near the door like she wanted to catch Trevor alone. Then she saw Marisol glance their way and thought better of it. Jenna slipped out with the others. Her heel caught on the threshold, a small stumble that felt like the only honest thing she'd done all morning. Marisol stayed behind. She waited until the room emptied, then closed the door with a soft click. Not dramatic, just intentional. Trevor stood slowly. He didn't rush. If he moved too fast, it would look anxious. If he moved too slow, it would look like he was making a point. In this building, even your walking speed could become a story. Marisol took a breath. Trevor, I'm really sorry. It's fine, he said. It's not fine, Marisol replied, and her voice turned practical. HR human, but also HR careful. That was an error. It shouldn't have happened. Trevor watched her face. Marisol was always neat, always calm, with the subtle fatigue of someone who mediated other people's messes all day. He'd never had a reason to dislike her. He'd also never had a reason to trust her. What did they see, he asked. Marisol's eyes tightened. Not much. I clicked out quickly. That's not an answer. She looked down at the laptop, then back up. Your name, the header, a couple lines. Not the full record. Trevor felt something ease by a fraction, then tighten again. A couple lines could still be enough. A couple lines could become a rumor dressed up as concern. He nodded once. Okay. Marisol lowered her voice. I'm going to document it as a privacy incident. I have to. Trevor didn't respond right away. Documentation was never neutral. Documentation was a weapon that simply waited for someone to pick it up. And what does that mean? He asked. It means I'll log that there was an accidental display of confidential information in a group setting. She swallowed. It means IT will review access logs. It means there'll be an investigation, Trevor finished. Marisol's shoulders dropped slightly, like she hated that he was right. Yes. Trevor let that sit. He could already feel consequences branching out. Careful glances, altered tone, maybe a quick check-in from management, maybe a quiet decision that Trevor was complicated, and complicated employees didn't get promoted. Complicated employees got managed. He leaned a hand on the table, palm on cold laminate. What tab was it? He asked again, slower. Marisol hesitated. The Employee Relations tab. Trevor's stomach tightened. That tab held the things nobody forgot, even after the company pretended it was resolved. He pushed air out through his nose. So they saw the complaint. Marisol didn't deny it. She said, I can't be sure how much anyone read. Trevor's mind went to Jenna, to the look on her face, half amusement, half entitlement, before the file opened. Jenna was confident in the way people were confident when consequences usually landed somewhere else. Marisol spoke again. Do you want me to send a reminder to the attendees? About confidentiality, not discussing anything that wasn't meant to be seen. Trevor knew what that meant. A reminder email would confirm something happened. It would turn a moment into a subject line. He shook his head. No. Marisol looked relieved and concerned at the same time. Okay. If anything comes up, if anyone says anything, please tell me. I mean that. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe someone inside this building cared about what was fair. He didn't say it, but the thought sat heavy in him. Fair isn't the same as safe. He left the conference room and walked the hallway with measured steps. The office smelled faintly of burnt coffee and toner. Monday had drained color from everything. At his desk, he sat and woke his monitor. The inbox was full. Work was relentless in the simple way work always was. Tasks that didn't care what you were carrying. He opened a spreadsheet and stared at the cells without seeing them. His chest felt tight not with panic, but with the effort of holding himself together in a room where he couldn't. A ping sounded. Darius, you good? Trevor's eyes moved to the name. Darius Gaines sat 2 rows over in logistics. Tall, quiet, the kind of man who listened more than he performed. They weren't close friends, but there was a shared language between them that didn't need much maintenance. Trevor stared at the message, then typed, yeah, just busy. 3 dots appeared, stopped, appeared again. Darius, I was in that meeting. I saw what happened. Trevor's fingers went still. Darius, if you want to talk, I'm here. If not, I get it. Trevor read it twice. He felt a sting of gratitude, small, sharp. Connection was like that for him now. Rare enough to hurt. He typed back, appreciate it. I'll be fine. He minimized the chat and forced himself to work. For the next few hours, he moved through tasks like a man crossing a slick floor. Careful, aware of every step. Every time someone walked behind him, his body tightened slightly, like it expected a comment. At 2:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. Maya pickup 3:30. His stomach tightened, but for a different reason. This part was non-negotiable. This part was his life. At 3:05, he stood, grabbed his coat, and walked toward the elevators. He felt eyes again. Not everyone. Not even most. Just enough to remind him he was visible in the wrong way. He passed Jenna's desk. She looked up quickly, then down. Her shoulders were tense, like she'd been rehearsing something. "Trevor," she said, low. He paused. Not because he wanted to, but because walking past would become its own message. Jenna stood, holding her phone like a shield. "About earlier, I didn't mean—" Trevor waited. She swallowed. "I shouldn't have said what I said. I was joking." Trevor studied her face. She looked embarrassed. She also looked like she wanted discomfort to end quickly, like she wanted him to do the cleanup work. Accept the apology, smooth the surface, make it easy. "It didn't sound like a joke," he said. Jenna's eyes flicked around, checking who could hear. It was just office talk. Office talk. The phrase people use to soften cruelty. Trevor nodded once. "Okay." Jenna exhaled like she'd been waiting for that. "So we're good?" The question landed wrong. Like he owed her absolution. Like his feelings were a loose end she wanted tied up. "I have to go," Trevor said. Jenna's expression tightened, defensive now. "Right. Of course you do." There it was. The edge under the sentence. The judgment dressed as observation. He didn't respond. He walked away. In the elevator, alone, his shoulders dropped a fraction. In the mirrored wall, he looked older than he felt on good days. 36, but with a tiredness that lived around his eyes. Not just from parenting, though that was real, but from being watched. Outside, the air was cold and clean. He breathed it in like it could wash something off him. His car was parked in the far lot. He'd started parking there after last year, after someone keyed his door and nobody admitted it. Security cameras didn't cover that section, the building manager had said. A coincidence. Trevor drove through after-school traffic, one hand steady on the wheel. His mind kept returning to the screen, his name, the file. That second of exposure. He pictured people replaying it later, curiosity turning into conversation. He tried to replace the thought with Maya's face, Maya's arms around his waist, the way she smelled like shampoo and crayons. At 3209, he pulled into the pickup line. Parents waited in cars, radios low, windows fogged. Trevor checked the clock, then looked at the building. A few kids were already spilling out, backpacks bouncing. Maya appeared in the doorway in her purple jacket, hair in two puffs, scanning the line like she always did. When she spotted him, her face changed, relief first, then joy, like she'd been holding her breath. Trevor's chest loosened. He raised a hand. Maya waved back with a seriousness that made him smile. She climbed into the back seat, buckled herself, and announced, "We made slime." "That sounds messy," Trevor said as he eased forward. "It was," Maya said proudly. "Miss Dalton said we were responsible scientists." Trevor glanced at her in the mirror. "Were you responsible?" Maya thought, then nodded. "Mostly." He smiled, small. He waited for the day's stories to settle him the way they usually did, but his phone buzzed in the cup holder. He didn't look right away. He didn't want to be that dad. At a red light, he glanced. A message from an unknown number. "Heard your file got pulled up." "That's wild. You okay?" Trevor stared at the screen. His grip tightened on the wheel. From the back seat, Maya's voice. "Dad? Yeah, baby? Are you mad?" He swallowed. He realized he must have changed. His silence, his shoulders, the way his eyes stopped moving. "No," he said softly. "Just thinking." Maya watched him, then said, "You can tell me if you're sad." The simplicity hit him harder than he expected. His eyes stung and he looked back to the road. "I'm okay," he said. "I promise." They got home to their apartment, a second-floor unit in a complex that always smelled faintly of someone else's dinner. Trevor kept it clean, but the place still held evidence of a life in motion. Shoes by the door, Maya's drawings on the fridge, laundry waiting to be folded. Maya dropped her backpack and ran to the kitchen. "Snack?" "Apple slices," Trevor said automatically. Maya groaned. "Can we have chips?" "Apple slices," he repeated, gentle. He washed his hands, pulled out an apple, and started cutting. Maya leaned on the counter. "Can we watch a show later?" "After homework." She sighed like the world had wronged her. "Okay." Trevor plated the apples with peanut butter and handed them over. He watched her eat, careful dipping, little hum under her breath. This was where he could breathe, not because life was easy, but because it was honest. No corporate performance, no coded cruelty. After Maya settled at the table, Trevor went to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. He pulled out his phone again and reread the unknown text. He didn't answer. He didn't even know who it was. But the fact someone outside the meeting knew meant the story had already moved. He opened his email and searched last year's thread, one he never deleted. Attendance, coaching, final warning. Memory returned in pieces. Glenn's office. Glenn's tone smooth, disappointed. Trevor explaining that Maya's mother had stopped showing up for scheduled weekends, that he had no backup, that he was doing everything he could. Glenn nodding like he listened and then saying, "We all have personal stuff, Trevor, but we have to be adults about it." Trevor had been an adult about it. That was the problem. Being an adult for him meant swallowing anger, taking shifts nobody wanted, smiling through condescension, and doing it all again the next day, because Maya needed school clothes, and rent was due whether he was respected or not. He'd gone to HR because he was scared. A final warning meant the next step was termination. Termination meant no health insurance, no stability for Maya. Marisol had listened, asked questions, been careful, then quietly told him Glenn's documentation didn't match the timekeeping logs. Glenn had been rounding up late minutes. The policy allowed a grace period. Glenn chose not to apply to Trevor. Marisol had used a word that felt validating and humiliating. Pattern. There was a pattern in the way Glenn spoke to him, the way he praised some employees as hungry and described Trevor as not all in, the way he asked once in front of others, "Where's Maya's mom in all this?" The question sounded like curiosity. It landed like judgment. Trevor had filed the complaint, not dramatic, not loud, just a formal statement with dates and facts, and it had worked, in the shallow corporate way things worked. Glenn stopped making comments. The warning was rescinded. Trevor was moved to another team. The company looked clean again, but the file remained. The record remained. Now, one accidental click had made it visible enough to matter. A small knock came at the bedroom door. Maya stood there holding her pencil. "Dad?" Trevor put the phone down quickly. "Yeah? I don't get number 5. He followed her back, sat beside her, and looked at the worksheet. Basic math. Maya's brows were pulled together in frustration. Trevor pointed gently, guiding without taking over. "Okay," he said, voice soft. "Let's do it together." For 20 minutes he stayed with her, letting her arrive at the answer. When she finally got it, her face lit up like she'd discovered something important about herself. "See?" Trevor said. "You already knew it. You just needed a second." Maya leaned into him, shoulder against his arm, then went back to her paper. The contact was brief, casual, and it grounded him more than any deep breath. After dinner, pasta and frozen broccoli, Trevor let Maya pick a show. She curled under a blanket, feet tucked close. Trevor sat at the other end pretending to watch while his mind kept circling. The power imbalance wasn't just titles and departments. It was who got to be messy and still be seen as competent, who could have a life that bled into work and be offered grace, and who got labeled unreliable. He'd built boundaries like survival tools. Don't overshare, don't complain, don't ask for pity. Show up, produce, leave. But boundaries had a cost. People couldn't connect with someone they didn't know. And loneliness for Trevor wasn't dramatic. It was the way conversation stopped when he entered a room, the way people asked about his weekend and didn't want the real answer. At 8:30, Maya yawned hard. Trevor turned off the TV. "Bath?" he asked. Maya groaned, then smiled. "Okay." The routine was steady. Water temperature, shampoo, towel, pajamas. Trevor listened to Maya talk about slime and a classmate who didn't share markers. He made the right noises, asked the right questions. He tried to stay present. At bedtime, Maya climbed under her comforter, already half asleep. "Dad?" she murmured. "Yeah, baby. Are you going to be okay tomorrow?" Trevor paused. He could have lied quickly, could have given her the easy answer. But her eyes were heavy with trust, not suspicion, and lying to that felt like damage. "I'm going to try," he said. Maya nodded, satisfied by effort more than certainty. "Okay. I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," she whispered back. In the hallway, Trevor stood still for a moment, listening to the apartment settle, pipes, distant voices through thin walls, a car door outside, ordinary sounds. He held on to them. Then he went back to the living room and picked up his phone again. 2 new messages in the unknown thread. They said it was about employee relations, like you filed something. "Jenna's acting weird. She's telling people she didn't know, just FYI." Trevor stared at the words until they blurred slightly, his jaw clenched. Not rage, not yet. Something colder, recognition. He sat on the couch, elbows on knees, phone in his hands. The room felt smaller now, less protected. Not because Maya wasn't there, but because the outside world had found a way to follow him home. He thought about confronting Jenna, going to Carla, demanding a written plan from HR. He also thought about doing what he always did: stay quiet, keep his head down, outwork the discomfort until people got bored. That strategy had kept him employed. It had also kept him alone. A third message came, this one from Darius. Darius, heads up. People are talking. Not everybody, but enough. You shouldn't be dealing with it by yourself. Trevor leaned back and stared at the ceiling. He felt tired in a deeper place than his body. He opened his contacts and hovered over Marisol's name. His thumb didn't move for a long moment. In his head, he heard Glenn's voice from last year. Smooth, disappointed. We have to be adults about it. Trevor tapped Marisol's name and hit call before he could talk himself out of it. It rang twice. Hello? Marisol answered, cautious, like she recognized the number and already feared what it meant. Marisol, Trevor said, keeping his voice low so he wouldn't wake Maya. It's Trevor. Yes, Marisol said. Hi. Is everything okay? Trevor looked at the dark TV screen, his reflection faint in it. He thought about the word okay and how useless it was. No, he said quietly. It's not. People are messaging me. It's spreading. Marisol exhaled. I was afraid of that. Trevor's voice stayed controlled, but there was a tremor under it. I need to know what you're going to do about it. A pause, just long enough to feel like a calculation. I can schedule a follow-up with you tomorrow, Marisol said. We can talk through next steps. I can remind leadership about confidentiality expectations. That doesn't stop people from treating me different, Trevor said. Marisol didn't pretend it would. No, she admitted, it doesn't, but we can address what happened, and we can address any retaliation if it occurs. Retaliation. Trevor almost laughed at the formality. Retaliation was rarely obvious. It lived in opportunities that disappeared, in tone changes, in who got invited to what. He took a breath. Tomorrow, he said. First thing. Yes, Marisol replied. I'll send an invite tonight. Trevor, I really am sorry. Trevor closed his eyes. He wanted to tell her sorry wasn't enough. He also didn't want to become the difficult employee in her file. I'm not asking for sympathy, he said. I'm asking for respect. Marisol's voice softened. Understood. They hung up. Trevor sat there a long time, listening to the quiet. He thought about Maya asking if he was sad. He thought about the unknown number texting him like humiliation was entertainment. He thought about Jenna's, so we're good, as if good was something he owed her. He stood, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly. His hands were steady again. He'd learned to make them steady. Tomorrow, he'd sit across from HR and hear careful language, procedural steps. He'd be asked what outcome he wanted, as if outcomes were always available, and he'd have to decide, finally, whether keeping his head down was still protecting him, or just keeping him small. He rinsed the glass, set it in the rack, and turned off the light. In the hallway, he paused outside Maya's door and listened to her breathing. Then Trevor went to bed without checking his phone again, because some boundaries were the only thing holding him together. But in the dark, with the apartment quiet around him, he knew the boundary between work life and real life had already been crossed, and he didn't know yet how he was going to get it back. Trevor woke before the alarm, eyes open in the dark like his body didn't trust sleep anymore. The apartment was still, no cartoons leaking through walls, no footsteps from Maya's room, just the heater clicking and the distant, occasional rush of a car passing on wet pavement. He lay there and tried to name what was sitting on his chest. It wasn't just anxiety. Anxiety was too clean a word. This was the familiar math he did every time the world hinted it might tilt. If this turns into a story, what part of me will they decide is the problem? He reached for his phone, checked the screen. No new messages. That didn't reassure him. It only meant the next wave hadn't started yet. When the alarm finally buzzed, he got up quietly and moved through the routine with the precision of someone handling glass. Shower, shave, button down, slacks, shoes. Each step small and controlled, like control could be saved up and used later. In the kitchen, he packed Maya's lunch the way he always did. Turkey sandwich, grapes, granola bar. He wrote a tiny note on a napkin without thinking too hard about it. Have a good day. Love you. He set the lunch into her backpack and paused with his hand still on the zipper. A backpack was such a small thing to carry. His mind flashed to the conference room again. His name in bold, the file header, The hush in the air. How fast a person could become a topic. At 6:45, he tapped on Maya's door and eased it open. "Hey," he said. Maya rolled over, hair flattened on one side, eyes blinking like light was rude. Trevor sat on the edge of the bed. He smoothed the blanket near her shoulder, a habit that made him feel like he was restoring order. Time to get up. Maya's face tightened in protest. "Do we have to?" "We do." She sat up slowly, then leaned forward and rested her forehead against his shoulder for a second. Half asleep. Not dramatic. Trevor stayed still until she pulled away. He didn't rush her. He didn't joke. He let it be what it was. A small, quiet request for steadiness. In the bathroom, she brushed her teeth with exaggerated misery. Trevor braided her hair at the kitchen table while she ate cereal, her eyes on the spoon. Her body relaxed in a way that always made him feel both proud and afraid. Proud that she felt safe. Afraid that safety could be interrupted by things she didn't understand yet. By 7:30 they were in the car. Maya hummed in the back seat, sneakers tapping lightly against the floor mat. Trevor drove with both hands on the wheel. At the red light near the school, he looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Calm face, tired eyes. A man who looked like he should be able to handle anything. He wondered if that was what people saw at work. Capable Trevor, quiet Trevor, Trevor who never caused problems. Until the moment they decided he did. Maya's voice floated up. "Dad? Yeah? Are we still doing library day on Saturday?" Trevor swallowed. His brain had been living in the next hour, the next meeting, the next possible rumor. The future beyond that felt vague, like it belonged to someone else. "Yes," he said. "We're doing library day." Maya nodded and went back to humming, satisfied by the firmness of his answer. At drop-off, she leaned forward between the seats. "You're picking me up?" Trevor met her eyes in the mirror. "Always." Maya held his gaze for a beat like she was storing the words somewhere safe. "Okay." He watched her disappear inside, backpack bouncing, then sat in the car for a second longer than usual. He didn't pray exactly, he just breathed and tried to hold on to the feeling of being needed in a way that was pure. Then he drove to work. The parking lot was already half full. He parked in the far section, the one with the blind spot in the cameras. It wasn't logical. It was emotional. It was where he felt less watched, even if he knew that wasn't true. Inside, the office was awake. Keyboards, copiers, someone laughing too loudly near the coffee machine. Trevor swiped his badge and kept his eyes forward. He made it to his desk without getting pulled into conversation, which was its own kind of mercy. His inbox was heavy. He opened his spreadsheet and forced himself to look like a person who had nothing new to be afraid of. At 8:12, a meeting invite arrived. Marisol Wen, 9 a.m., confidential. Follow up. No agenda. Location, HR Office 3B. Trevor stared at it. He felt the dull thud of inevitability. Last night's call hadn't fixed anything. It had only confirmed that the company now had a process. Process was where people disappeared politely. He accepted the invite. Across the office, Darius glanced up. He didn't wave. He just lifted his chin once, an acknowledgement that said, "I saw you get singled out without being singled out." Trevor returned the gesture, small and grateful. At 8:55, he stood and walked toward the elevators, carrying only his phone and badge. He didn't bring a notebook. A notebook looked like preparation. Preparation looked like conflict. Conflict got interpreted. The HR floor was quieter, carpeted, the air faintly scented with cleaning product. A place designed to smooth everything down. Marisol met him in the hallway outside her office. Navy blazer, hair pulled back, expression set to professional empathy. "Hi," she said. "Thank you for coming." "You said first thing," Trevor replied. Marisol nodded and opened the door. "Come in." HR Office 3B was small. Desk, 2 chairs, a round table, a plant that looked like it survived out of obligation. Marisol gestured for him to sit at the round table rather than across her desk, like the shape might make it feel less like an interrogation. Trevor sat. He kept his hands on his thighs. He didn't fidget. Marisol took a breath. "I want to start by acknowledging what happened yesterday. The accidental display of your employee relations tab was a privacy breach." Hearing it said, that directly made Trevor's stomach tighten. Privacy breach sounded serious. It also sounded like something the company would frame as a technical glitch instead of a personal harm. Marisol continued, "I filed an internal incident report. IT has been notified. They'll review how that content was accessible in the presentation environment and whether there were any system issues." Trevor kept his voice level. "People saw my name. People saw there was something to see." Marisol nodded. "Yes, and now people are messaging me about it," Trevor said. "From numbers I don't recognize." Marisol's eyebrows drew together. "Do you still have the messages?" Trevor hesitated. Sharing them meant inviting HR further into his life. Not sharing them meant leaving the company free to pretend nothing happened outside that room. He pulled up the thread and held the phone so she could read without taking it. Marisol leaned forward, eyes scanning. Her mouth tightened. Okay, that's not acceptable. What are you going to do? Trevor asked. Marisol folded her hands. There are a few options. 1. I can send a general reminder to the meeting attendees about confidentiality and respectful workplace expectations, without referencing names. It'll confirm something happened, Trevor said. Yes, Marisol admitted. But at this point, the gossip exists. The reminder can help contain it. Trevor stared at the plant, dust on the leaves. Everything here looked maintained from a distance. What else? He asked. Marisol's tone shifted slightly, more formal. 2. If you believe any coworker is harassing you, retaliating, or creating a hostile work environment, you can file a complaint. We can investigate. That includes repeated texts if we can determine the source. Trevor's jaw flexed. Investigations don't stop people from thinking what they think. No, Marisol said softly. They don't. But they can create consequences if someone crosses a line. And consequences for the company? Trevor asked, watching her. Marisol's expression stayed neutral. The incident is logged. That's as much as I can say. Trevor let out a slow breath. Even when HR cared, HR had boundaries too. Boundaries built around liability. Marisol leaned forward slightly. There's also a mediated conversation option, she said, between you and the person involved. Sometimes when people understand impact. Trevor cut in, not loud but firm. I don't want to sit in a room and teach a grown woman how to respect people. Marisol blinked, then nodded. Understood. Trevor's voice stayed low. What I want is for this to stop being entertainment. Marisol wrote something down. The pen moved with the calm of someone used to turning pain into notes. I'm going to send a general confidentiality reminder today, Marisol said. Brief, no names. I'll also speak with leadership and your manager about confidentiality and respectful conduct. My manager doesn't need to be involved, Trevor said. Marisol met his eyes. Your manager was in the meeting, and if any work decisions change around you, that's where it will show up. Trevor didn't like it. He couldn't argue with it. Marisol added, I also want you to document anything that happens. Messages, comments, changes in assignments. Trevor's mouth tightened. So I live like I'm building a case. I'm not asking you to live in fear, Marisol said. I'm asking you to keep options. Options. Another corporate word that sounded like freedom and often meant choices you won't like. Trevor stood. Fine, he said. Send your email. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. I'll keep records. Marisol stood too. Trevor. She paused, and her voice softened. I know this doesn't fix it, but you didn't deserve that. Trevor nodded once and left before he could say something that sounded like gratitude. Gratitude made it feel like the company was doing him a favor by acknowledging harm it caused. Back on his floor, he sat at his desk and pretended to work. People typed. People sipped coffee. People acted normal. At 9:17, Marisol's email hit inboxes. Reminder, confidentiality and respectful workplace conduct. Trevor watched the ripple. Heads leaned closer to screens. Chairs shifted. A few eyes flicked toward him, then away. Some people tried to pretend they hadn't looked. That made it worse. He kept his gaze on his monitor and forced his fingers to move. Work was the only place he could hide that didn't look like hiding. At 10:30, a shadow fell across his desk. Jenna stood there holding a folder like a prop. Her lipstick was perfect. Her face wore a careful expression that could be read as remorse if you wanted to be generous. Hey, she said, too soft. Trevor didn't stand. He didn't smile. Hey. Jenna glanced around the open office. Can we talk? Privately? Trevor heard the second request inside it. Help me make this go away. He stood. Hallway, he said. They walked to a corner near the supply closet where the air smelled like paper and cleaning spray. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. Jenna exhaled. Okay. First, about yesterday, I'm sorry. Trevor waited. Silence was a tool he'd learned to use carefully. It could be read as composure. It could also be read as threat. He kept it short. I was making a joke, Jenna continued. It didn't land. And then that HR thing happened and it made everything. It didn't make everything, Trevor said quietly. It showed what was already there. Jenna blinked. What does that mean? Trevor held her gaze. It means you felt comfortable saying I always leave early in a room full of people. Jenna's jaw tightened. Well, you do. Trevor felt his pulse jump. There it was, the instinct to defend herself by insisting she was right. I leave at the end of my shift. he said. I flex when it's approved. And I have childcare responsibilities that I've communicated. I'm not saying you're a bad employee, Jenna said quickly. But you're implying it, Trevor replied. Jenna's eyes narrowed. Her tone sharpened. Trevor, come on. Everyone has stuff. You're not the only one. The sentence came with a familiar shape, like a phrase that had been said to him before in different mouths. Everyone has stuff, Trevor repeated. Not everyone gets laughed at for it. Jenna looked away, then back. Her voice softened again, but it didn't sound like empathy. It sounded like strategy. I'm trying to fix this. Trevor's shoulders stayed square. Then stop talking about me. I'm not talking about you, she said too quickly. Trevor didn't move. Someone texted me last night, from an unknown number. They knew what happened. Jenna's expression flickered. Surprise? Then the smallest tightening. That wasn't me. I didn't say it was, Trevor said. I'm telling you the outcome. Whatever you meant, people are using it. Jenna's cheeks flushed. Okay, so what do you want me to do? Trevor answered slowly, measured. I want you to stop making comments about my schedule. I want you to stop framing my parenting like it's a flaw. If you need something for work, ask me. If you have an issue, bring it to our manager. Jenna stared at him, then let out a short laugh that held no humor. Wow. Trevor's voice stayed even. What? Jenna's eyes hardened. You're acting like I'm some villain. I'm acting like I'm tired, Trevor said. That landed. Jenna's mouth closed, and for a second she looked uncertain, like she'd expected him to smooth things over, not name the exhaustion. Then her posture straightened. Her corporate composure snapped back into place. Okay, Jenna said coolly. Message received. I'll keep it professional. That's all I'm asking, Trevor said. Jenna turned to leave, then paused. Just so you know, she said, voice flat, it's not a good look to come at people like this. After everything. Trevor felt the words hit like a warning wrapped in advice. After everything, as if his file, his record of trying to survive, was now a leash she could tug. I'm not coming at you, he said. I'm setting a boundary. Jenna held his gaze for a beat, then walked away, heels clicking like punctuation. Trevor stayed still for a moment, breathing slow. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt exposed. A boundary only worked if the other person respected it, or if you had enough power to enforce it. Back at his desk, Darius rolled his chair back a few inches, just enough to speak without putting on a show. You okay? Darius murmured. Trevor's first instinct was to say yes. Always yes. Don't burden people. Don't give anyone the satisfaction of knowing they shook you. I handled it, Trevor said. Darius's eyes stayed on him. That's not what I asked. Trevor looked at his screen. I'm fine, he said, and heard the lie. Darius didn't argue. Lunch, he said. If you want. Trevor nodded. Yeah. At noon, they walked to a small park across the street. 2 benches, bare trees, a trash can overflowing with coffee cups. The air was cold enough to feel sharp in the lungs. The sun was out, but it didn't warm much. They sat facing the street and ate in silence for a few minutes. Trevor appreciated it. Silence with Darius didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like permission to breathe. Darius spoke first. You get messages again today? Not yet, Trevor said. Darius nodded. It'll die down. That doesn't make it okay, Trevor replied. No, Darius agreed. But people don't like uncertainty. They fill it with stories. Trevor stared out at the street. A woman pushed a stroller, bundled baby barely visible. Trevor felt a memory tug. The years when Maya was small, when his world shrank to diapers and bottles and sleep deprivation. The way strangers had looked at him then, too, surprised to see a black man alone with a baby, as if caregiving was a costume he wore for attention. I filed that complaint last year because I thought it would protect me, Trevor said quietly. Now it's public enough. Darius chewed slowly. I saw the header, he said. Didn't read anything else. But I knew what it meant. Trevor glanced at him. What did you think? Darius didn't answer immediately. Then he said, I thought you did what you had to do. Trevor felt a small relief he didn't want to show. Most people don't see it that way. Most people don't have to live in the same world you do. Trevor looked at him. You do. Darius met his eyes. Yeah. They ate a little more. Then Darius asked, How do you do it? The single dad thing. Trevor let out a breath, half tired, half amused. I don't know, he admitted. I do the next thing. I get up. I pack lunch. I go to work. I pick her up. I make dinner. I do homework. I put her to bed. Darius nodded like he was listening to a manual he needed. Some days I feel like I'm doing it well, Trevor added. Some days I feel like I'm barely holding on. But she's watching, so I try not to fall apart in front of her. Darius said quietly, "That's love." Trevor looked away. "That's responsibility," he corrected. "It can be both." Darius replied. Trevor's phone buzzed. An email. From Carla Mendez. Subject, "Quick check-in today, 2:00 p.m. His stomach tightened. Check-in didn't feel casual today. At 1:58, Trevor walked to Carla's office. The door was open. Carla sat behind her desk with her laptop angled toward her and a blank notepad beside it. "Hey, Trevor," she said. "Come in." Close the door. The click of the latch sounded louder than it should have. Carla gestured to the chair across from her. Trevor sat. Carla's expression was neutral, but her eyes were alert. "I want to talk about yesterday," she said. Trevor nodded. "Okay. I got Marisol's email," Carla continued, "and I'm aware there was an accidental display of confidential information." "I'm not here to ask what was in your file," Carla said. "That's not my business. But I am here to ask how you're doing, and whether anyone is making this harder for you." Trevor's instinct was to protect himself by minimizing. "I'm handling it," he said. Carla nodded as if she expected that answer. "Trevor," she said, voice firmer, "if someone is harassing you or retaliating, I need to know. Not later. Now. I can't correct what I don't see." Trevor stared at the edge of her notepad, blank paper waiting to become a record. He could name Jenna. He could also become a problem in the company's eyes. He knew how quickly conflict attached itself to the person who spoke up, not the person who started it. "People are talking," he said carefully, "and someone made a comment yesterday that wasn't appropriate." Carla's eyes sharpened. "Who?" Trevor swallowed. He thought of Jenna's warning. Not a good look. And how easily it could be turned into, "Trevor is aggressive." He thought of how people heard tone through their own bias. "I don't want to escalate," Trevor said. Carla leaned back slightly. "I hear you," she said, "but I need names if I'm going to intervene." Trevor took a slow breath. "Jenna," he said. Carla's face didn't change much, but something moved behind her eyes. Recognition, irritation. "What did she say?" "She joked about me always leaving early," Trevor said. "In the meeting." She laughed. People laughed. Carla's jaw tightened. "And today?" "She came to my desk," Trevor continued. "Apologized. Then implied I shouldn't come at people after everything." Carla repeated, "After everything," under her breath. Then she looked up. "Thank you for telling me. That wasn't appropriate." Trevor didn't relax. "Not yet," Carla continued. "I'm going to speak with Jenna directly about professional conduct and boundaries. I'm also going to remind the team that schedule flexibility is approved through management and is not up for commentary." Trevor's stomach tightened. Intervention could protect him. It could also paint a brighter target on his back. "I don't want this to make things worse," he said. Carla's voice softened a notch. "It's already worse. You're just carrying it quietly." Trevor looked at her. Carla wasn't performing sympathy. She was angry on his behalf, and that was rarer than kindness. Carla asked, "Your schedule? You still doing the same pickup routine for Maya?" "Yes," Trevor said. "Keep doing it," Carla replied. "If anyone has an issue, they come to me." "Thank you." Carla held his gaze. "And if you need a day, work from home, whatever, tell me. Don't wait until you're at the edge." Trevor nodded because he didn't trust himself to answer honestly. The afternoon moved slowly. The office stayed tense in a way that wasn't loud, but wasn't subtle either. Some people avoided him. Others overcorrected. Too friendly, too bright, like they wanted credit for being normal. At 3:12, his phone buzzed with the school's number. His stomach dropped before he answered. School calls during the day were rarely casual. "Hello," Trevor said, stepping away from his desk into the aisle for privacy. "Hi, Mr. Carter," a woman said gently. "This is Ms. Dalton, Maya's teacher." Trevor's chest tightened. "Is she okay?" "She's okay," Ms. Dalton said quickly. "She's not hurt, but she's upset." Trevor leaned a hand on the edge of a file cabinet, steadying himself. "What happened?" "We had a writing activity today," Miss Dalton explained. "The prompt was about families. Maya wrote something that concerned me." Trevor closed his eyes briefly. "What did she write?" Ms. Dalton hesitated, then spoke with care. "She wrote that she worries you're sad, and that sometimes you're quiet in the car." She asked. "Miss," Dalton's voice softened further. "She asked in her writing if she can make you less heavy." Trevor felt his throat tighten so hard it hurt. His fingers pressed into the metal cabinet. "She's a very responsible child," Miss Dalton continued, "but she's carrying something. I just wanted to let you know and to ask if everything is okay at home." Trevor looked toward the glass wall of the office, the corporate world that kept leaking into his home no matter how carefully he tried to contain it. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. "We're okay. I'll talk to her." Of course, Ms. Dalton replied. Maya is wonderful, Mr. Carter. She just loves you. Trevor's eyes stung. Thank you, he managed. When he hung up, he stood very still, phone in his hand. He felt a different kind of shame than he'd felt at work. Not shame for being disrespected. Shame for thinking he could hide the weight from a child who knew his face better than anyone. At 3:58, he packed up and left. He didn't rush. He didn't linger. As he walked out, he saw Jenna at her desk, posture rigid. She didn't look up. Trevor didn't look at her either. He didn't want to give her a moment she could later describe however she needed to. At pickup, Maya ran to the car faster than usual. She'd buckled in and sat very still, hands folded like she was trying to be good enough to fix something. Trevor started the car and pulled forward slowly. Hey, he said softly. How was your day? Okay, Maya said, voice small. He waited, giving silence room. After a few blocks, Maya whispered, Miss Dalton called you. Trevor's hands tightened on the wheel. Yeah, he said. She did. Am I in trouble? Maya asked quickly. No, Trevor said immediately. No, baby. You're not in trouble at all. She said, I was worried. Trevor swallowed. Are you worried? Maya hesitated. A little. Trevor let the answer sit. He didn't rush to fix it with reassurance he couldn't guarantee. Sometimes you look like you're thinking really hard, Maya said. I am, Trevor admitted. Work has been stressful. Maya's voice dropped. Did someone be mean? Adults wrapped cruelty in jokes and policies. Children named it cleanly. Yes, Trevor said. Someone was mean. Why? Maya asked. Trevor searched for an answer that wouldn't make her afraid of the world. Sometimes people say things without thinking, he said. Sometimes they think they can say whatever they want. Maya turned slightly. Did you do something bad? No, Trevor said. Firm. You hear me? I did not do something bad. Maya watched him, then nodded as if she needed the firmness more than the explanation. At home, Trevor made grilled cheese and tomato soup. Maya ate quietly at first, then started talking about slime and recess. Trevor asked questions and made his voice warm, even as his mind kept circling. After homework, Maya curled on the couch with a blanket and her show. Trevor watched her more than the screen. He noticed how often she glanced at him, checking his face like a thermometer. Halfway through, Trevor muted the TV. Maya looked up. Why'd you stop it? Trevor shifted closer. Voice calm. I want to tell you something. Maya nodded, wary. You know how sometimes I'm quiet, he said, or I look like I'm thinking. That's not your job to fix, Trevor said softly. I'm an adult. If I'm feeling heavy, I'll take care of it. And if I need help, I'll ask for help. Maya's eyes filled. But I want you to be happy. Trevor took her hand. Her fingers were small and warm. I know, he said. And I love that you care. But you don't have to carry me. Maya blinked hard, holding tears back like bravery was required. It's okay to feel things, Trevor added. And it's okay to tell me when you're worried. But you don't have to solve my feelings. Your job is to be 8. Maya let out a shaky breath. Okay. Trevor kissed her forehead. And I'm going to handle work, he said, in the right way. Later, after Maya was asleep, Trevor sat at the kitchen table and opened his personal email. He forwarded Jenna's earlier clarification email to himself again, then saved screenshots of the unknown texts in a folder. It felt paranoid. It also felt like learning the rules of a game he never asked to play. He searched the company intranet for the employee assistance program and stared at the counseling link. Free sessions. Confidential, they claimed. He hovered over schedule and felt resistance rise in him. Pride, fear, distrust. He clicked anyway and booked a phone appointment for the next afternoon. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. So are you suing or what? People say you're gonna sue. Trevor stared at the message until the anger cooled into something more useful. He typed slowly, Stop contacting me. Do not text this number again. He hit send. Then he blocked the number. His hands were steady. The next morning, the situation changed shape. When Trevor arrived at work, there was a new meeting invite. Meeting. Workplace Conduct Concern. Organizer. Marisol Nguyen. Attendees. Trevor Carter. Jenna Whitaker. Carla Mendez. Marisol Nguyen time. 11 o'clock a.m. Location HR Office 3B. Trevor's pulse picked up. A mediated conversation. The option he'd rejected. He clicked the details. No agenda. No notes. He looked across the office. Jenna sat stiff at her desk, head bent toward her screen, posture too composed. Carla's office door was closed. Trevor felt the outline of the move before he had proof. Jenna's, keep communication respectful email. Her warning tone in the hallway. The way she'd looked relieved when he said okay yesterday, like she'd been waiting for him to perform forgiveness. He stood and walked to Carla's office. He knocked once and opened the door. Carla looked up immediately, expression serious. "Trevor," she said. "Come in." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Carla's jaw was tight. "You saw the invite. What is it?" Carla exhaled slowly, as if she was forcing herself to stay calm. "Jenna raised a concern with HR," she said. "She said she felt intimidated yesterday, that your tone was aggressive." Trevor felt heat flare in his chest. He kept his voice low. "I didn't raise my voice." "I believe you," Carla said, immediate. Belief wasn't the same as protection. Trevor knew that. He swallowed. "So what now?" Carla leaned forward slightly. "Now we go to HR and we keep it factual," she said. "We stick to exactly what was said, exactly what happened. You don't editorialize. You don't apologize for having boundaries. You don't give them anything they can twist." Trevor stared at her. "This is retaliation." Carla didn't argue. "It might be," she said. "Or it might be her trying to control the narrative. Either way, we deal with it." Trevor's breath felt shallow for a moment. He forced it deeper. He thought of Maya asking if he was going to be okay. He thought of Miss Dalton reading Maya's words out loud. He nodded once. "Okay." As he left Carla's office, his phone buzzed with a message from Darius. "Darius, HR meeting at 11? Heard Jenna's been talking. You want me nearby." Trevor stared at the message. HR's instruction would be to keep everything confidential. Confidential in practice often meant, "You don't get witnesses." Trevor typed back, "Yeah, be nearby. Thanks." At 10:58, Trevor walked toward the elevators with Carla beside him. His steps were steady. His face was calm. Inside, something was bracing. The third-floor hallway felt even quieter than yesterday. Marisol stood near Office 3B, posture composed. Jenna stood a few feet away, arms crossed, looking at her phone. When Jenna finally looked up, her eyes met Trevor's. For a second, Trevor saw fear, or something like it. Then he saw determination underneath, a choice already made. Marisol opened the office door. "Let's go in," she said, voice gentle but firm. Trevor stepped inside, and as the door closed behind them, he understood that what was happening now wasn't about what he'd done. It was about what he represented in other people's stories, and whether the company would rather manage the truth or manage him. Marisol didn't sit behind her desk this time. She chose the small round table in the corner of HR Office 3B, the one meant to make hard conversations look collaborative. "Thank you for coming," she said as Trevor, Carla, and Jenna took their seats. Marisol's voice was measured, careful, like she could keep the room safe by keeping the temperature of her words low. "Before we start, I want to set some ground rules." Trevor sat with his spine straight and his hands on his thighs. He'd picked a neutral outfit again. Slacks, a plain button-down, nothing sharp, nothing that could be described later with loaded adjectives. He hated that he even had to think in those terms. Hated that presentation wasn't just about competence anymore. It was about survivability. Marisol continued. "We'll speak one at a time. We'll focus on behaviors and impact, not assumptions about intent. This meeting is not disciplinary at this moment. It's a fact-finding conversation so we can decide next steps." Jenna nodded like she'd been trained for it. Her sweater was soft, her makeup minimal. She looked calm in the way people looked when they wanted to be believed. Her arms were folded at first, then she unfolded them slowly and placed her hands on the table, open, controlled. Trevor noticed the performance because he knew he didn't get to perform openness the same way. If he opened his hands too much, someone might see it as agitation. If he kept them still, someone might call it cold. Carla sat beside him, shoulders squared, face neutral. Trevor could feel her attention angled toward Jenna and Marisol, the way it did when she was trying to keep the conversation anchored in fact. Marisol glanced down at a notepad. "Jenna, you raised a concern about your interaction with Trevor yesterday. I'd like you to explain what happened from your perspective." Jenna drew in a breath and looked at Marisol, not at Trevor. "Yesterday morning, I approached Trevor to apologize for my comment in the meeting. I wanted to smooth things over. We walked to the hallway near the supply closet, and I tried to explain I didn't mean anything personal." She paused like she was searching for the correct, credible words. "And Trevor," Jenna continued, "he was very intense." Trevor felt his jaw tighten, but his face stayed still. Jenna's voice stayed soft. "He told me I was framing his parenting like a flaw. He said I was implying he was a bad employee. I tried to tell him that's not what I meant, but he wouldn't let it go." She swallowed, her eyes dipping briefly, as if she was reliving a frightening moment. "I felt like I couldn't say anything without being accused of something. And the way he told me to stop talking about him." Jenna's gaze lifted. meeting Marisol's with a practiced sincerity. It made me feel unsafe, like I didn't know what he might do next. The word unsafe landed in Trevor's chest like a dropped weight. It wasn't just an accusation. It was a label that could travel through the company faster than any explanation he gave. It was a word with a long shadow, and Jenna knew, whether she admitted it or not, what kind of shadow it cast over men who looked like Trevor. Carla's head turned toward Jenna, her expression tightening. Marisol's pen stopped for a fraction of a second, then started again. "Thank you," Marisol said gently. "Trevor, I'm going to ask you to share your perspective." Trevor waited long enough to make sure his voice would come out level. "Jenna came to my desk and asked to talk privately," he said. "I agreed to talk in the hallway because I didn't want an audience." Jenna shifted slightly, like she didn't like that he said it. Trevor continued, eyes on Marisol. "She apologized for the comment she made in the meeting. She said she was joking. I told her it didn't feel like a joke. I told her I wanted her to stop making comments about my schedule and my parenting." Marisol nodded. "And your tone?" "My tone was firm," Trevor said. "I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step toward her. I didn't threaten her. I told her what I needed her to stop doing." Jenna made a small sound, quiet disbelief. Trevor looked at her briefly, then back to Marisol. "After I said that, Jenna told me it wasn't a good look to come at people after everything." "After everything meaning?" Trevor kept his answer bounded. "Meaning what happened in the meeting. Meaning whatever she thinks she saw." Carla spoke then, controlled, but edged. "I want to add that Trevor is not an aggressive employee. I've worked with him for 2 years. He's direct, he's consistent. That's not intimidation." Jenna's lips tightened. "That's your perception." Carla met her eyes. "That's my experience." Marisol raised a hand. "Okay. I'm going to ask clarifying questions." She looked at Jenna. "Jenna, did Trevor make any statement you perceived as a threat? For example, 'I'm going to get you fired. You'll regret this.' Anything like that?" Jenna's eyes flicked down. "No." "Did he raise his voice?" Marisol asked. Jenna hesitated. "Not shout. But his tone was sharp. Did he block your path or step into your space?" Marisol continued. "No." She turned to Trevor. "Trevor, did you call Jenna names? Insult her?" "No." "Did you make any gestures? Pointing? Hands raised? Clenched fists?" Marisol asked. Trevor's jaw flecked. "No." "Is there anything you regret saying?" Trevor knew this was where a corporate apology could smooth the situation. He also knew apologies became admissions, and he wasn't apologizing for telling someone to stop disrespecting him. "I regret that it had to happen at all," he said. "I regret that I had to explain why joking about my parenting isn't harmless." Jenna's eyebrows lifted faintly, like she'd just gotten confirmation of her story. He was still intense. Carla leaned forward. "Marisol, we're not going to pretend this started in the hallway. It started in the meeting." Jenna's comment was inappropriate. Marisol nodded. "I'm not ignoring that. I'm looking at the full picture." Trevor felt the phrase settle in his gut. Full picture could mean context. It could also mean a broader evaluation of his demeanor, his facial expressions, his tone, the kind of soft scrutiny that never touched Jenna the same way. Marisol set her pen down. "Here's what I'm hearing," she said. Jenna experienced Trevor's boundary setting as intimidating and unsafe. Trevor experienced Jenna's comments, both in the meeting and afterward, as disrespectful and potentially retaliatory. Jenna's mouth opened slightly as if she wanted to argue the word retaliatory. Carla's posture stiffened. Marisol continued. "Given the seriousness of the language used, particularly unsafe, we need to address this carefully. I'm going to open a formal review." Trevor's stomach dropped. "A review of what?" he asked, keeping his voice controlled. "Of the incident and related workplace conduct concerns," Marisol said. "That includes confidentiality, gossip, and the interpersonal conflict between you and Jenna." Carla's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean for Trevor today?" Marisol's tone stayed gentle, but her words didn't. "I'm going to recommend temporary separation while we review. That may look like schedule adjustments, remote work, or administrative leave." Trevor's pulse spiked. He stared at Marisol. "So I'm the one being moved." "It's not a punishment," Marisol said quickly, a sentence that sounded rehearsed. "It's a standard step when there are conflicting accounts and concerns about safety and retaliation." Jenna's shoulders relaxed a fraction. Trevor saw it and felt something tighten in his chest. Carla's voice turned firm. "If you separate them, it needs to be Jenna, not Trevor. Trevor has a childcare schedule that depends on stability." Marisol nodded. "I understand. I'll discuss options with leadership. Right now the priority is de-escalation." Trevor looked at the round table, everyone equidistant from the center. pretending the power was equal. I want to say this clearly, Trevor said, and his voice surprised him with how steady it was. I am not a threat. I'm not going to accept being treated like one because I told someone to stop disrespecting me. Marisol held his gaze. I hear you, she said softly. I'm asking you to work with us while we sort it out. Carla asked, how long? Typically 1 to 2 weeks, Marisol said, sometimes longer depending on interviews. Trevor felt a cold clarity settle in. 1 to 2 weeks where he'd be out of the building, out of sight, out of control of the story. 1 to 2 weeks where people would keep talking and call it concern. Marisol stood. For now, I'm asking both of you not to contact each other directly. Work communication should go through Carla. Jenna nodded quickly. Of course. Trevor nodded once. Marisol added, Trevor, you'll receive next steps in writing today. Carla rose with him. Jenna stood last, face composed. She glanced at Trevor briefly, eyes glossy, expression practiced, and then looked away as if she couldn't bear to be seen doing what she'd just done. In the hallway, Carla kept her voice low. This isn't fair. Trevor swallowed. Fair doesn't matter, he said, and hated the bitterness he heard. Carla stopped near the elevators and angled her body so passers-by couldn't read her face. Listen to me. Don't email anyone. Don't vent on Teams. Don't send texts. Don't give them anything. Trevor nodded. I know. I'm going to push back, Carla said. I can't promise the outcome, but I'm going to push. Trevor felt gratitude and fear tangled together. Thank you, he said. He rode the elevator down alone. Back on his floor, he walked toward his desk with the strange sensation of being watched by people who weren't looking at him. His inbox was still there, but when he clicked a shared drive folder, it spun and then denied access. A few minutes later, his team's message bar turned gray, then signed him out. The system moved faster than humans. It always did. At 2:04 p.m., Marisol's email arrived on his phone, because his computer access was already going. Administrative leave with pay. Effective immediately. System access temporarily suspended. Do not contact coworkers about this matter. Trevor stared at the screen until the words stopped reading like instructions and started reading like exile. He stood and picked up his coat. He didn't rush. He didn't look around like he was searching for allies. He walked out the way he walked in. Steady, quiet, invisible, except now invisibility was being enforced. At the front door, his badge flashed red. He swiped again. Red. A security guard approached, neutral expression, hands relaxed. Sir, can I help you? Trevor kept his voice low, polite. I'm on leave. My access might be disabled. It wasn't hostile, but it was humiliating in a precise, clean way. Trevor stepped through and felt eyes on his back, just enough to make his skin prickle. Outside, cold air hit his face. He walked to his car in the far lot and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. His hands on the steering wheel were steady. He waited for them to shake. They didn't. Not yet. He drove to the school early and waited in the pickup line. Parents scrolled their phones and sipped coffee. A couple of them laughed at something in the way people laughed when their lives weren't on the edge of someone else's decision. When Maya climbed into the back seat, she frowned. Dad, why are you here early? Trevor's voice stayed light. Work's doing some stuff. I got off early. Maya narrowed her eyes. Little detective. Did someone be mean again? Trevor swallowed. Some adults are having trouble acting like adults, he said carefully. Maya giggled once, then sobered. Are you in trouble? He caught himself. I didn't do anything wrong, he said instead. Maya accepted that, but she kept looking at him in the mirror as if she was taking his temperature. At home, he went through the motions. Snack, homework, dinner, but the apartment felt smaller. The quiet inside, it felt less like peace and more like waiting. When Maya went to bed, Trevor sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. Work login denied. Password rejected. He stared at the login box, the little spinning circle that never turned into access. He checked his bank account. Pay would still come for now, but money wasn't the only thing the job provided. It provided structure. A place to be. A place to prove he deserved space in the world. His phone buzzed. Darius. Darius, you out? Heard you're on leave. Trevor stared at the message. HR had told him not to contact coworkers about this matter. The phrase was broad enough to swallow even kindness. He typed carefully. Home for a bit. Appreciate you checking in. Darius responded. If you need groceries or anything, say so. Don't be proud. Trevor read that twice. The second time it stung. Pride had kept him upright. Pride had also kept him alone. He didn't answer right away. He spent the next day cleaning as if scrubbing the counters could scrub the feeling of being labeled. He folded laundry, organized Maya's school papers, replaced a burned-out light bulb, Small tasks with clear outcomes, the kind of work he could still control. At noon, Marisol called. "Hi, Trevor," she said. Her voice was careful again. "I wanted to let you know the review has started. We'll be interviewing relevant attendees and anyone with direct knowledge of the hallway interaction." "How many people?" Trevor asked. Marisol hesitated. "I don't have a final list yet." Trevor felt a cold, humorless thought. "So the whole office gets to weigh in on my character." He didn't say it as a joke. "So everyone gets to tell a story," he said quietly. "That's not what we're doing," Marisol replied quickly, but she sounded defensive, because she knew stories were exactly what people would bring. Trevor's jaw tightened. "Jenna called me unsafe. Are you treating that like a safety threat?" Marisol paused. "We're treating it as a serious concern that needs to be assessed. You know what that word does to people like me." Silence. Then Marisol said quietly, "Yes, I do." Trevor gripped the phone. "Then why is she allowed to use it like a weapon?" Marisol's tone shifted toward policy. "Trevor, I can't speak to intent. I can only speak to process. Process. A clean word for messy harm," Marisol added. "I'll also be interviewing you again, tomorrow. I'll send the time." "Okay," Trevor said. When he hung up, he sat at the table and stared at the wood grain until his eyes unfocused. His home felt less like a shelter and more like a waiting room. That evening, he opened the EAP link and scheduled a counseling session. Phone appointment, 45 minutes. His instinct was to cancel immediately. Handle it alone. Don't bring a stranger into it. Don't give anyone more information. He didn't cancel. 2 days into leave, Ms. Dalton called again, not to alarm him, but to tell him Maya seemed more settled after Trevor's conversation with her. Trevor thanked her and hung up, then sat in silence, feeling the ache of realizing he'd been leaking stress into the car without meaning to. The next text that hit him came from Keisha. "Keisha, Ms. Dalton called me," said Maya, seemed worried. "What's going on?" Trevor stared at the name for a long moment. Keisha hadn't been consistent in months. Her messages came in bursts, intense, then gone. He'd built his life around her absence because it was the only stable thing about her. He typed carefully, "Work situation. I'm handling it." "Maya's okay," Keisha replied quickly. "Work situation like what? You losing your job?" The speed of her question didn't feel like concern. It felt like calculation. "I'm on leave, not fired," Trevor wrote. Then, "So you home? You can bring her to me this weekend then." Trevor's jaw clenched. The request wasn't inherently wrong. The timing and framing were. Like she could step in now and rewrite the months of silence as temporary inconvenience. He forced his fingers slow. "Maya needs consistency. We can talk about a schedule when you can commit to it." Keisha didn't reply for several minutes. Then, "Always gotta be your way." Trevor set the phone down. He didn't respond. He couldn't afford a fight that would echo into Maya's life. The EAP call with Dr. Patel came the next afternoon. Trevor sat in his car again, parked where neighbors wouldn't overhear. He stared at the pale winter sky and waited for the counselor's voice. Dr. Patel asked, "What brought you to schedule this appointment?" Trevor's throat tightened. "My job," he said, "and my kid noticing." Dr. Patel's tone stayed calm. "Tell me what happened." Trevor gave the timeline. Meeting. Screen share. Jenna's joke. The hallway. Jenna's claim. HR meeting. Administrative leave. When he finished, Dr. Patel asked, "What's the hardest part right now?" Trevor stared at the steering wheel. The honest answer felt too raw to say out loud. "That I can do everything right," he said quietly, "and still be treated like I'm dangerous." Dr. Patel let a beat pass. "That's not a small thing to carry." Trevor swallowed. "I can't afford to fall apart," he said. "I'm a single dad." "Being a single dad doesn't mean you're not allowed to be affected," Dr. Patel replied. "It means you have to be intentional about how you process it." Trevor felt something loosen, just slightly. Not relief. Permission. Dr. Patel asked, "What support do you have?" Trevor thought of his phone contacts. The list was short in the ways that mattered. One coworker, he said. Darius. Family? Doctor. Patel asked. Trevor pictured his sister Tasha 2 states away. Holiday calls, jokes, then long gaps. Not nearby, he admitted. Dr. Patel said, "Self-reliance helped you survive. It can also become a cage." Trevor's eyes stung. He swallowed hard. He didn't cry. He just sat with the truth of it, breathing through the tightness in his throat. The next morning, Marisol interviewed him again. Video call, her face framed by the same neutral background. She asked him to walk through the hallway interaction slowly. His words, his tone, his body language, his hands. Trevor answered each question with the calm precision of someone who'd learned that accuracy was protection. Marisol asked if he'd discussed the matter with coworkers. Trevor chose honesty with boundaries. I told Darius I was home, he said. I didn't share details. Marisol nodded. Okay, please forward screenshots of the unknown texts to HR. He did, and it felt like giving the company more of his life than it deserved. But he did it anyway because he wanted a record that didn't live only in his phone. Toward the end of the call, Marisol's tone shifted, like she was approaching something she didn't want to say. I want to prepare you for possible outcomes, she said. Trevor's stomach tightened. Go ahead. One outcome is that the intimidation claim is unsubstantiated, Marisol said. Another is that we determine both parties contributed to an unprofessional interaction and recommend coaching or disciplinary action. Trevor's voice stayed controlled, but there was heat underneath. Coaching for what? He asked. For using a firm voice? For conflict de-escalation, Marisol said carefully. For communication. Trevor leaned back, chair creaking. So I get coached, he said quietly, and she gets to keep making jokes until I'm trained to take them. That's not what I'm saying, Marisol replied. But that's what it becomes, Trevor said, and heard the tiredness in his own voice. Marisol continued. Another outcome leadership sometimes chooses is reassignment, when they believe the working relationship is compromised. My schedule is built around my daughter. I know, Marisol said softly. The call ended. Trevor sat at the table staring at nothing. He tried to do the math. Childcare, rent, bills, severance if it came to that. He tried to find a path where he didn't lose something important. On day 8 of leave, Carla called. Her voice sounded like she was walking somewhere private. I talked to leadership, she said. They're concerned about liability. Trevor almost laughed. Of course. Carla lowered her voice. They're leaning toward offering you a transfer, she said. Customer response. Different manager. Different floor. A transfer where? Trevor asked, already bracing. Carla paused. It's a later shift. 11 to 7. Trevor felt the floor drop out from under him. That's impossible, he said low. I told them that, Carla replied quickly. I told them your childcare schedule. I told them your performance is strong. I told them moving you is effectively punishing you. And they don't care, Trevor said. Carla didn't deny it. They want separation, she said. They think separation solves it. What about Jenna? Trevor asked. Carla went quiet. Then, they're not moving her. Trevor's throat tightened. The unfairness wasn't abstract anymore. It had a number on it. 11 to 7. It had a consequence. Missing pickup. Missing dinner. Missing homework. Missing bedtime. If I don't accept, Trevor asked, what happens? Carla's voice tightened. They may treat it as refusal of a reasonable reassignment, she said carefully, which could lead to separation. The trap. 2 doors, both bad. Trevor stared at the wall where Maya's drawings hung. A son with a smiling face. 2 stick figures holding hands. Can you negotiate a different shift, he asked. I tried, Carla said. They won't budge. Trevor felt something in him crack. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just an internal giving way, like a rope fraying. I can't do 11 to 7, he said finally. I can't. Carla exhaled, a sound like grief. Then we need to talk separation terms, she said. Don't resign without something in writing. After the call, Trevor sat on the couch and stared at the carpet. He tried to find solutions. He opened his phone contacts and scrolled, then stopped. There weren't enough names. He texted Keisha anyway, swallowing pride he didn't have room for. Work may change my hours. Can you pick up Maya after school some days? The message sat on delivered with no response. He texted Darius, do you know any reliable after-school programs? I might need options. Darius responded quickly. Yeah, I'll ask around. You okay? Trevor stared at, you okay? And felt how empty the answer fine would be now. He typed, not really. Darius replied, come by tonight after Maya sleeps. We can talk. No pressure. Trevor hesitated, then typed, okay. That night after Maya fell asleep, Trevor drove to Darius's place. The apartment was modest and clean. Darius offered him water without questions. They sat on the couch with the TV off. Darius let the silence be there until Trevor was ready. They're trying to move me to 11 to 7, Trevor said. Darius's eyebrows lifted. That's not a transfer, he said. That's a push. Trevor nodded. Exactly. Darius leaned forward. If you refuse, they'll separate me, Trevor said. Fire me. Whatever word they choose. Darius sat back, jaw tight. That's messed up. Trevor let out a humorless breath. Yeah. Darius was quiet for a moment. Then he stood, went to the kitchen, and came back with a notebook and pen like he was building a plan in real time. Childcare, Darius said, writing. After-school programs, trusted sitters, community centers, churches sometimes have lists. Trevor watched him write, feeling a complicated mix of relief and humiliation. Help felt good. Help also made the situation undeniable. And jobs, Darius added, writing again. If they push you out, you need to be ready. Trevor swallowed. I don't want to start over. I know, Darius said, but don't let them decide whether your kid eats. The next day, the official outcome email arrived from Marisol. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't a clear statement that Jenna's claim was false. It was corporate language arranged to reduce risk. It said Jenna's intimidation claim was subjective and could not be substantiated. It said Jenna's comment in the meeting was inappropriate, and she would receive coaching. It said Trevor had been visibly upset and firm, and would also receive coaching. It offered reassignment. Customer response. Shift B, 11 to 7. Confirm acceptance by Friday at 5 p.m. Decline and discuss separation options. Trevor read it 3 times. Each time the same conclusion hardened. The company was choosing the outcome that cost them the least. Carla called an hour later. I'm sorry, she said. I argued for remote work. I argued for a different shift. They won't budge. If I accept, I lose my daughter's pickup, Trevor said, voice flat. I know, Carla replied. And if I don't, I lose the job. Carla went quiet. Yes. Trevor closed his eyes. The choice wasn't a choice. It was a test of what he would sacrifice, his time with Maya or his income. He thought about the promise, always, and felt anger and grief collide. I can't do 11 to 7, he said again, firmer. I can't. Then consult an employment attorney, Carla said. Even if you don't sue, get advice. Protect yourself. That night, Maya woke from a bad dream. Trevor held her on the couch while she whispered, You were gone. I'm right here, he told her. Promise? Maya asked. Trevor's throat tightened. I promise, he said, and felt the cost of promising in a world where adults could take your stability with a meeting invite. On Thursday, he emailed Marisol, simple and careful. I cannot accept Shift B due to childcare responsibilities. Please provide separation terms in writing. Friday, Marisol called. Leadership is offering a separation agreement, she said. 4-week severance, payout of unused PTO, continuation of benefits through end of next month. You'll have 7 days to review. Trevor stared at the wall. 4 weeks. A single month to rebuild. A single month to keep the rent paid while job hunting with a kid depending on him. And if I don't sign, he asked, then the company will proceed with termination without severance, Marisol replied, voice apologetic but firm. The trap again. After the call, Trevor sat at the table and read the agreement line by line. Waiver of claims. Non-disparagement. Confidentiality. Money in exchange for silence. He forwarded it to an attorney Carla recommended and scheduled a consultation. The attorney didn't promise justice. He offered realism. The offer was modest but common. Negotiation might get him a little more, might get him nothing. A claim might exist, but proving retaliation would take time, money, stress, and uncertainty. What do you want most? The attorney asked. Stability for my daughter, Trevor said without thinking. That answer decided everything. Sunday evening after library and groceries and a forced movie night that felt like Trevor was acting in his own home. He sat at the kitchen table with the agreement in front of him and a pen in his hand. Maya's laughter from earlier still echoed faintly in his mind. Her questions, her trust, her need for him to remain predictable. Trevor signed. The ink dried. He expected relief. What he felt instead was mourning, quiet, heavy, and clean. Not just for the job, but for the illusion that if he stayed polite enough, invisible enough, he could avoid becoming someone else's problem. The next morning, he drove Maya to school like nothing had changed. He smiled at the crossing guard. He kissed Maya's forehead. He said, Love you. Love you. Maya replied and ran inside. Trevor got back in the car and sat in the school parking lot with the engine off. He watched parents drive away. He watched the doors close. Then he lowered his forehead to the steering wheel. He cried. Not loud, not dramatic. The kind of crying that came from holding too much for too long. His shoulders shook slightly. His breath hitched. He kept one hand clamped around the wheel like he needed something solid to keep him from dissolving. He cried for the job, yes, but also for every meeting where he'd been careful with his face and hands and voice. For every time he'd swallowed disrespect and called it professionalism. For the way one word, unsafe, could erase his humanity in a sentence. When the wave passed, he lifted his head and wiped his face with the sleeve of his coat. He looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes red, Face tired. Still here. He picked up his phone and opened his contacts. His thumb hovered over Darius's name. He didn't press it. He scrolled and found his sister instead, Tasha. He hadn't called her in months. The phone rang. Trev? Tasha answered, surprised. Background noise. Kids? A TV. You okay? No, he admitted. I'm not. A pause. Then her voice softened. Talk to me. Trevor stared at the school building. I lost my job, he said. Silence on the line. Then a sharp inhale. Oh, Trevor, Tasha said. Why didn't you tell me you were dealing with something? Trevor closed his eyes. Because I thought I could handle it. Tasha's voice got firmer, the way older sisters' voices did when they were trying not to cry and not to yell. You don't have to handle everything alone. Trevor felt the truth of it hit him like exhaustion. His grip tightened on the phone. I know, he said quietly. I know. And sitting there in the parking lot, face still damp, voice still rough, Trevor realized the loss wasn't only the paycheck. It was the last illusion that being quiet, being perfect, being invisible could keep him safe. Trevor didn't tell Maya on the day he signed the separation agreement. He didn't tell her the next day either, not because he thought he could hide it forever, but because he needed one more night where bedtime was just bedtime, not the beginning of a new chapter she didn't ask for. He needed one more morning where he could pack grapes into a lunch bag without Maya watching his hands for tremors. He drove her to school like always. He smiled at the crossing guard. He said good morning to Ms. Dalton in the hallway with the same polite steadiness he'd practiced for years. And when Maya ran off toward her classroom, Trevor stood still for half a breath longer than normal, watching her disappear into the crowd of backpacks and winter coats. Then he went back to the car and sat in the parking lot until the inside of his chest stopped feeling sharp. The cry in the car didn't fix anything. It just changed the pressure. It released something he'd been clenching for so long that he'd started to think clenching was character. He wiped his face, took one deep breath, and drove home to an apartment that felt too quiet on a weekday morning. The couch was where he usually sat for a minute before going back out the door to work. Now he sat there and realized he didn't know what to do with the time. He knew how to be busy. He knew how to be necessary. He didn't know how to be still without feeling guilty. He opened his laptop at the kitchen table and stared at job postings. Operations coordinator, warehouse supervisor, logistics lead. The titles blurred together. Most of them demanded flexible availability, which was corporate code for your life should be easier to move than ours. He closed the laptop and stared at the blank reflection in the dark screen. His first instinct was to call Carla and ask what else could be done, like there was a lever somewhere he hadn't pulled. His second instinct was to call Darius, because Darius had been the one person who didn't make Trevor feel like his dignity was negotiable. He did neither. He picked up his phone and called his sister again. Tasha answered on the third ring. Hey, she said, voice alert now, like she'd been waiting. Trevor sat at the kitchen table with his forearms on the wood. I'm okay, he tried. Tasha didn't let him have it. No, you're not, she said gently. Tell me what you need. The question sat in his chest like a foreign object. He'd built his adult life around not needing. Needing was what people used to define you. I don't know, Trevor admitted. I need a plan. Tasha exhaled. Okay, she said. We can do that. They started with basics. His severance timeline, bills, what could be paused, what couldn't. Tasha asked questions in a practical tone that didn't invite shame. Trevor realized how rare that was. Someone asking about money without judgment, as if survival wasn't a personal failure. When they got off the phone, Trevor felt a small shift inside him. Not relief. Something like permission. He spent the day doing things that were almost embarrassingly normal. Laundry, dishes, wiping down counters, vacuuming the corners he usually ignored. It wasn't about cleanliness. It was about proving to himself he could still complete tasks, that he could still create order. At 2:25, his phone buzzed with a message from Keisha. Keisha, so you're really not going back? Trevor stared at it. He could already feel the familiar tug. Keisha stepping into the space only when it was dramatic enough to notice. He typed, I'm finding a new job. A pause. Then, Keisha, Maya told me you've been sad. Trevor's jaw tightened. Not at Maya. At the idea of Maya carrying his mood between parents like a note passed in class. He typed, I'm handling it. Maya is okay. Keisha replied, you always say that. Trevor didn't answer. He set the phone face down. It wasn't that Keisha didn't deserve information. It was that she used information like currency. She traded it for leverage. Trevor was tired of transactions. He wanted parenting. At 3:30, he picked Maya up. She ran to the car like she always did, but once she was buckled in, she got quiet, eyes searching his face through the mirror. Trevor drove a few blocks before speaking. You good? He asked. Maya nodded too fast. Yeah. Trevor let silence sit. He'd learned that Maya's yeah sometimes meant, I don't want to make it worse. At home, she asked for a snack and then did homework with unusual concentration. Trevor watched her from the kitchen, guilt rising slowly. Kids didn't need the whole truth, but they needed a stable emotional climate. They needed to feel they weren't the reason adults were tense. After dinner, Maya climbed onto the couch and turned the TV on low. Trevor sat beside her, not watching, just being present. Her small body leaned into his arm the way it always did when she wanted contact without asking for it. He decided not to wait any longer. Maya, he said gently. She muted the TV immediately, eyes wide. What? Trevor took a breath. He kept his voice steady, like he was reading something important but not scary. I need to tell you something about work. Maya's fingers twisted the edge of the blanket. You remember I said some adults were having trouble acting like adults? Trevor asked. Maya nodded. Well, Trevor said, my job decided I'm not going back there anymore. Like you quit? Trevor chose his words carefully. I left, he said, because they wanted me to work hours that would keep me from picking you up. And I chose our life. Maya stared at him for a moment like she was trying to understand the weight of the decision. Did you get fired? She asked, voice small. Trevor leaned in slightly so she couldn't miss his face. You hear me? He said. I did not do something wrong. Maya's eyes shimmered. Then why? Trevor didn't give her the full system. He gave her the truth she could hold. Sometimes, he said, grown-ups make decisions that aren't fair. Sometimes they choose what's easiest instead of what's right. Maya swallowed hard. Are we going to be broke? The question punched him in the chest, not because it was dramatic, but because it was practical. Maya was 8. 8-year-olds shouldn't carry that kind of math. Trevor slid an arm around her shoulders. We're okay, he said firm. I have money for now, and I'm going to find a new job. You don't have to worry about that. Maya's voice trembled. Are we going to move? No, Trevor said. Then he paused because he didn't want to promise what the world could still change. Not right now, he said carefully. And if we ever have to, I'll tell you before anything happens. You won't be surprised. Maya's eyes filled and tears finally fell, quiet and stubborn. She pressed her face into his shirt. I don't want you to be sad, she whispered. Trevor closed his eyes. He held her, feeling the small trembling in her shoulders. I am sad, he admitted softly. But sadness doesn't mean we're not okay. It means something mattered. Maya lifted her head, cheeks wet. What mattered? Trevor swallowed. Respect, he said. Being treated like you matter, being able to tell someone stop and not be punished for it. Maya's brows knit. Like when kids push you and you tell the teacher. Trevor almost smiled through the ache. Like that, he said. Except grown-ups don't always have teachers who do the right thing. Maya sniffed. So what do we do? Trevor kissed her forehead. We keep living, he said. We keep our routines. And I look for work. And I ask for help when I need it. Maya's eyes flicked up. From who? Trevor hesitated. This was where his old instincts would take over. No one. Don't owe. Don't lean. Don't show weakness. But he remembered Dr. Patel calling self-reliance a cage. He remembered Tasha's voice saying, tell me what you need. From people who care, Trevor said. Aunt Tasha, Mr. Darius, maybe some neighbors, and maybe your mom, if she can be consistent. Maya's face tightened at the mention of Keisha. Is Mom coming back? I don't know yet, Trevor said honestly. But whatever happens, I'm here. Maya stared at him like she was looking for cracks, then nodded slowly, accepting the steadiness more than the words. That night, Trevor stayed up after Maya fell asleep and did the work he'd been avoiding because it made everything official. He updated his resume. He wrote his accomplishments in clean lines, reduced shipping errors by 18% through process checks, trained 6 new hires and built onboarding documentation, improved inventory reconciliation turnaround times. He stared at the section that asked why he left his last job and left it blank. He wasn't going to write, because a coworker learned that unsafe was a word that could reroute a man's whole life. He applied to 5 jobs, then 5 more, then 1 more just because the act of hitting submit made him feel like he was still moving. In the days that followed, he learned that job hunting as a single parent wasn't just about qualifications. It was about time. Who could watch Maya while he interviewed? Who could cover pickup? Who could be backup if a manager expected just 1 more hour? He didn't have a deep bench. On Thursday afternoon, Keisha finally replied to the text he'd sent days earlier about after-school help. Keisha, I can take Maya Tuesday and Thursday after school. She can stay with me till 7. Trevor stared at the message for a long time. 2 afternoons could change everything. 2 afternoons could also become 2 broken promises if Keisha disappeared again. He typed, "Let's meet in person Saturday. We need a plan that's consistent for Maya." Keisha replied, "Fine. Where?" Trevor chose a cafe near a public park. Neutral. Public. No intimacy. Boundaries built into the walls. Saturday came. Trevor dropped Maya at the library's kids program. An hour of crafts with staff supervision, then drove to the cafe with his stomach tight. Keisha was already inside, sitting by the window. She looked tired in a way Trevor recognized, even if he didn't want to. Life had worked her too, but Trevor couldn't let empathy become permission for instability. He walked in and stopped at the table. "Hey," he said. Keisha stood. "Hey." They didn't hug, they sat. Silence settled between them, heavy with all the months and all the disappointments. Keisha broke it first. "So you really lost the job." Trevor held her gaze. "I left," he corrected, "because they tried to move me to a shift that would have taken me away from Maya." Keisha's eyes narrowed. "It's always got to be about Maya with you." Trevor blinked once, stunned by the sentence. Then he spoke, low and steady. "It is always about Maya," he said. "She's our kid." Keisha looked away toward the window. "I'm trying to be involved." "Then it has to be consistent," he said. "Not when it's convenient. Not when you're mad. Not when it makes you feel better." Keisha's jaw tightened. "You think I don't have a life?" "I think you do," Trevor said evenly. "I also think Maya deserves to know what to expect." Keisha's fingers tightened around her cup. "Ms. Dalton calling me," she started, then stopped. "What?" Trevor asked. Keisha's voice dropped. "It made me feel like a stranger," she admitted, and for a second it sounded real. "Like the school only knows you." Trevor felt a flicker of empathy. Small, inconvenient. He let it exist without letting it drive. "You disappeared," he said quietly. "What did you think would happen?" "I didn't disappear," she said, but her tone wasn't convincing. "I was going through things." Trevor didn't attack her. He didn't soothe her either. Maya was still going to school, he said. Still getting sick, still growing. I was still there. Keisha blinked hard and looked down. "So what? You want me to beg?" Trevor shook his head. "I want you to show up," he said. "Not with guilt, with actions." Keisha's eyes lifted. Something in her expression shifted, defensiveness loosening into a reluctant understanding. "Okay," she said quietly. Trevor leaned forward. "Tuesday and Thursday," he said. "Are you sure you can do that every week? Not just for a month?" Keisha nodded. "My schedule changed," she said. "I'm back at the salon. I can be out by 3. Trevor didn't let relief turn into trust too fast. "Maya needs pickup at 3:30, he said. "She needs dinner and homework. She needs bedtime on time. And if you can't make it, you call me by noon, not at 3:25. Keisha bristled. "You're acting like I'm a child." Trevor kept his voice calm. "I'm acting like Maya is a child," he said, "and she deserves adults." Keisha stared at him for a long moment. Then she exhaled, shoulders dropping slightly. "Fine," she said. "Shared calendar. Noon notice. Whatever." Trevor nodded. "And," he added, "no speaking badly about each other to her. No making her the messenger." Keisha's eyes flashed. "I don't do that." Trevor held her gaze. "Good," he said. "Then it won't be hard." When they left the cafe, there was no reconciliation scene. No hug. Just 2 adults agreeing, awkwardly, imperfectly, to do better because a child deserved it. Trevor picked Maya up from the library program. She held up a paper snowflake, proud. "Look," she said. "It's beautiful," Trevor replied, and meant it. At home, he told Maya, gently, that her mom might start picking her up Tuesdays and Thursdays. Maya's face tightened. "Is she really going to come?" Trevor sat beside her on the couch. "That's what she says," he said. "And we're going to see. You won't be stranded." Maya nodded, skeptical but listening. Tuesday came. Trevor waited in the school parking lot like he couldn't stop himself. He watched as Keisha's car pulled in. He watched her get out and walk toward Maya with a small wave. Maya hesitated. 1 second, maybe 2, then walked over. Keisha crouched and spoke to her. Maya's face didn't light up. It didn't shut down either. She climbed into Keisha's car and looked back once. A quick glance that asked Trevor without words. "You're still here, right?" Trevor lifted a hand. Maya turned forward. Trevor sat in his car until they drove away. Then he breathed out slowly, like he'd been holding air in his lungs for months. Thursday, Keisha showed up again. It didn't erase the past. It didn't heal anything overnight. It simply added something new. a pattern that might become dependable if it was protected with boundaries. With 2 afternoons covered, Trevor's job search opened up. He applied to roles with slightly later hours, roles that had been impossible before. He landed an interview at a mid-sized distribution company across town. Practical place, less glossy, more honest work. The hours were 8 to 4:30 with occasional overtime. The pay was a little less than before, but stable. On interview morning, Trevor sat in his car outside the building for 5 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel. He thought about his old job and how quickly a narrative had been built around him. How he'd tried to be invisible to stay safe. How invisibility hadn't protected him. It had only left him without allies when the story shifted. He promised himself something simple. In the next place, he would still be careful, but not small. Boundaries without isolation. Professionalism without self-erasure. Inside, the interview was straightforward. Denise Howard, the operations manager, asked about process improvement and training. Trevor answered with calm confidence. He didn't oversell. He didn't apologize for being a father. Near the end, Denise asked, "Why did you leave your last company?" Trevor felt time tighten. He could lie cleanly. He could say restructuring. He could keep it smooth. He chose truth with boundaries. It stopped being a healthy fit, he said. I'm looking for a place where professionalism includes respect, where boundaries don't get punished. Denise studied him for a beat. Then she nodded. Fair, she said simply, and moved on. A week later, the offer arrived. Trevor read the email twice, then stared at the screen until relief started to seep into his body in slow increments, like warmth returning to fingers after being numb. That night, he told Maya. Maya's smile came cautious first, then bigger when he lifted her into a hug. So you'll still pick me up? She asked. Trevor laughed softly, surprised by the sound. Yes, he said. I'll still pick you up. Always? Maya asked, eyes serious. Trevor pressed his forehead to hers. Always, he repeated. This time it felt less like a gamble. The first week at the new job was quieter than his old company. Less performative culture, more practical work. People were direct. The coffee was worse. Trevor didn't care. He learned names. He listened. He did the work. When someone asked about his weekend, he said, library with my kid, and let it be normal. No shame, no over-explaining. At home, the rhythm settled again. Tuesdays and Thursdays became Keisha's days. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when Keisha ran late, moments when she snapped defensively, but she showed up more often than not. Trevor held the boundary line without turning it into a battlefield. One evening, during a handoff, Keisha stood by Trevor's car and watched Maya climb into her booster seat. She's getting big, Keisha said quietly. Trevor nodded. Yeah, I know I messed up, she said, voice low. I'm trying. Trevor looked at her, and something in him softened, not into forgiveness, but into recognition. He didn't have to hate her to protect Maya. He didn't have to punish her to maintain boundaries. I see you trying, Trevor said. Keep doing it. Don't make her pay for adult problems. Keisha swallowed, nodding. I won't, she said. Trevor watched her drive away with Maya and felt the complicated relief of sharing responsibility again, not because Keisha deserved comfort, because Maya deserved parents who could act like adults. Months later, an email from Marisol appeared in Trevor's inbox. Just seeing her name tightened his stomach. Subject, checking in. He stared at it for a full minute before opening. Marisol wrote that the company had updated confidentiality safeguards and presentation protocols. She wrote, carefully, that she was sorry for how things unfolded, and that she hoped he and Maya were well. Trevor read it twice. His first reaction was anger, safeguards after harm, apology after exit. His second reaction was exhaustion. The company had moved on, and it could afford to. Trevor had been forced to. He didn't reply right away. He went to the living room where Maya was on the floor doing a puzzle, her hair in a messy puff, her tongue slightly out in concentration. Dad, she said without looking up, I can't find the corner piece. Trevor crouched beside her. Let's see, he said. They searched together, hands moving over cardboard pieces. Quiet, focused, ordinary, and Trevor felt something he hadn't felt in a long time without effort. Peace that didn't require him to perform. That night, after Maya went to bed, he replied to Marisol. Marisol, thank you for letting me know. I'm glad safeguards were put in place. I'm doing well in a new role. I hope you're well too. Trevor. He kept it simple. He didn't reopen the wound. He didn't offer forgiveness as a performance. He closed the door gently because the goal wasn't to win. It was to live. In early spring, Trevor ran into Darius at a grocery store. Darius stood in the cereal aisle comparing boxes like he was trying to solve a math problem. Darius looked up and smiled. Real, unguarded. Man, he said, look at you. Trevor chuckled. I'm buying cereal. Darius stepped closer, voice lower. You good? Trevor nodded. Yeah, he said, and realized it was true. Darius studied him like he could see the difference. I'm glad, he said. You deserved quiet. Trevor didn't deflect. Thank you, he said. As they parted, Darius added, Don't go back to being an island. Trevor nodded once. I won't. On a Saturday in late spring, Trevor took Maya to the park. Maya climbed the jungle gym with fearless confidence, the kind kids had when they believed the world would catch them. Trevor sat on a bench with a coffee and watched her. Another dad sat on the bench nearby. After a while, the man nodded toward Maya. How old? 8, Trevor said. Mine's 6, the man replied, and they fell into the small talk of parents, schools, snacks, the way kids could be exhausting and hilarious in the same hour. It was ordinary. Trevor realized he'd missed ordinary conversation more than he'd admitted. Maya ran back, cheeks flushed. She climbed onto the bench and leaned her head against Trevor's arm. You look happy, she said. Trevor glanced down at her. I am, he said, and the simplicity of it surprised him. Maya looked up. You're not heavy today, Trevor swallowed. The old sting of her words returned, but now it was mixed with gratitude. He kissed the top of her head. Not today, he said. On the walk home, Trevor thought about the choices that brought him here. He thought about the years he tried to survive by being invisible, about the complaint he filed because he had no other leverage, about the boundary he set with Jenna, how he'd been firm, and how firmness had been reframed as danger. He thought about refusing the shift that would have taken him from Maya, even though it cost him the job, about accepting help from Darius, calling Tasha, sitting in a car talking to a counselor because his daughter had written she wanted to make him less heavy. None of the choices were clean. Each one cost him something, but they also built something. A life where Maya didn't have to wonder if he'd come back. A life where boundaries weren't walls meant to keep everyone out, but doors with locks, letting the right people in and keeping the wrong behavior out. That night, after Maya fell asleep, Trevor stood in her doorway and listened to her breathing. Steady, soft. He felt the quiet gratitude of a man who'd been lonely and still reached for connection anyway. He turned off the hall light and sat on the couch in the dim living room. The silence didn't feel threatening anymore. It felt like rest. Trevor didn't get a public apology. The company didn't admit wrongdoing in a way that matched the harm. Jenna didn't face consequences that felt equal. Life didn't tie itself into a bow. But Trevor had kept his integrity. He had protected his child. And he had learned, slowly, that self-awareness mattered more than being seen as right. He could acknowledge his own mistakes too. How long he'd carried everything alone, how quickly he'd defaulted to silence. How often he'd mistaken isolation for strength. He could name that without shame now because naming it was part of changing it. He sat back, breathed, and let the future feel like something he could participate in, not something waiting to punish him. If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts in the comments. What moment felt the most real or the most difficult to sit with? And tell us where you're listening from, your city or your country, so people can find each other here. If you'd like more grounded stories about ordinary people making hard choices, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who appreciates calm, realistic storytelling. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing to Prime Black Stories. We'll keep bringing you stories that don't need hype to be true. One last question to leave you with. When a choice costs you something either way, how do you decide what you can live with? Thank you for listening.